He was living out of a van with nothing. No money, no plan, no safety net. Most people in that situation survive. They get by. They find a way to make ends meet. Bob Schober did something different. He built a roofing company from nothing, scaled it to over 50 million and sold it to a private equity. And then he did something that almost nobody does after an exit like that. He went back to the streets, not to where he came from, but to give back to people who are still there. My guest today has one of the most remarkable stories I've ever heard. Bob Schober, known as the nine-figure roofer, went from living out of a van to building One Solutions into one of the fastest growing roofing companies in America, scaling it to over 50 million before a successful private equity exit. But his story did not stop there. After achieving his financial success, he shifted his focus to impact, creating a global movement centered around generosity, influence, and redefining what success truly means. By combining business, content, and real-world acts of kindness, Bob uses his platform to help strangers change their lives and inspire millions to do the same. Bob, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Stacey. It's good to be here.
Let's start at the very beginning because I think your story is going to stop people in their tracks. You were living out of a van, no money, no resources. What was the chapter of your life actually like? And what happened that changed the trajectory?
I think when you live like that, there's a level of loneliness and desperation that you can't really, I don't think you could really put into words.
Right.
I mean, at the time when I was living in that van, I was 22, 23 years old. Um, I was following the Grateful Dead around and selling things on tour. uh,
Yeah.
and doing like music events and big events like spring break and selling T-shirts and I was kind of in and out of sobriety. I started
Yeah.
doing drugs at a really young age. I think I smoked my first joint when I was 12, 11, 12. And I'm one of these guys that there was no progression. It was like I got high for the first time and then I was high 24/7 for the next few years, right?
Hmm.
At 15, I ran away from home. I grew up in Pennsylvania. It was like Thanksgiving time. Remember leaving the house. I took like 2 cartons of my parents' Salem cigarettes and 2 bottles of Jim Beam. And I thought I was going to make it on my own. And that didn't last too long. I was gone for about a week. Cops picked me up, went back to my parents' house, ended up in a rehab a few months later. And, just kind of in and out of that lifestyle. I think that I definitely had loving parents, but from kind of a broken home at the time. And I would say probably some poor modeling of, what what parenting and what relationships look like that probably still affects me today. Uh,
Yeah.
there's always room for growth, right? So, um, at 24 years of age, uh, I got sober. Yesterday, actually, May 31st, 1997 was, the day that I got sober. Today's June 1st. So I just celebrated 29 years. And I've been able to manifest and create a life beyond my wildest dreams. I've been able to do that with really surrounded by amazing people. I think my favorite quote is, if I have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. So you just talked
Yeah.
about some of those accolades, and certainly I'm an important link in that chain of success that we had, but it could not have been done without my business partners, Matt and Colin, right? Like I'm kind of this flighty guy,
Yeah.
certainly entrepreneurial. I have been my entire life. I'm the kind of guy that would rather strike out swinging for the fences than get walked or hit a single, right?
Right.
I think I've always had this, probably my biggest fuel was like this fear of mediocrity. I just couldn't see myself as a guy that's going to go work 9 to 5 somewhere for 40 hours a week and punch a clock for 40 years and call it a day. It just wasn't my speed. Um, from the beginning, I've always had this kind of drive and ambition, whether it was like shoveling snow or coming up with some kind of creative entrepreneurial, idea when I was young to even right now, right? Like this thing doesn't really shut off from a business sense. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a blessing and a curse, but overall it's a blessing, right? So that's kind of the gist.
I love it. Now, what did you see in the roof industry that made you think that you could build something extraordinary there?
When you kind of come up in Alcoholics Anonymous and you hang out with a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics, there comes this really strong bond because you kind of make it through this life that probably could have killed you because you lose a lot of friends along the way. And then you kind of turn that into uh, amazing things start to happen. And what I saw was something that could give a lot of people an opportunity they might not have anywhere else. I went and sold roofs, for a summer in Kansas during a big hailstorm. I think I made like 40 grand over a 3-month period, and I was a good sales guy, but not a good project manager, and kind of to be good in the space that we're in, you gotta be both, the way that we
Yeah,
do it. But I thought to myself, I learned enough to be able to put the gas in the car and hit the gas, and if I could surround myself with people that could kind of, keep the car in the right lane,
yeah,
and maintain the car, then it would be a success. And I had one of my partners, my best friend, this guy Matt, who lived in Texas, a guy that I kind of helped get sober years earlier. It's funny, you never know when you're helping someone. At some point, they may come save your life or change your life down the road, and he's done both of those things since then. Um, but we started the company and we just grew it, and we added on this guy Colin a couple years later, or a year and a half later, and between the 3 of us, we had a we were kinda on fire. It was definitely good timing, right? The roofing is I don't wanna say it's a gold rush, but there's a lot of people selling roofs these days, and a lot of the trades in general, you're starting to see, companies pop up left and right, and there's
yeah,
certainly the ability to build generational wealth within the trades, I think more so than anything else that I know of.
right. Now, most businesses never get to a million. You got to 50. Like, what did you figure out about building a company that most entrepreneurs never learn?
I think scalability. I see a lot of people that, they go start a business and then they kinda become a slave to the business for, a bunch of years, and with my I learned really early on that if I could replicate myself, roofing is done door to door. I mean, we literally have, like, probably over 600, 700 reps right now around the country knocking on doors. The easiest way to find messed up roofs in areas that have just been hit by a storm, or kind of in general. So I saw very early that if I could take a guy that has maybe a little bit of a checkered past, but that is sober and honest and living a good life, and if I could teach him how to do what I did because I had been a door-to-door guy for years, if I
Yeah.
could teach that and replicate that, then I would be successful. So, scalability, if you're gonna take something to a level that, is way beyond 1,000,000 a year or 2,000,000 a year, you have to know how to do that. That's the trick, and if you're good, then you replicate yourself.
Now, what was the hardest moment between starting with nothing and reaching that level, the moment you almost quit?
Probably setting your ego to the side because 'cause I'm like this kinda diva sales guy that has a if you said, "Bob, like, what's your talent?" Like, I can meet people where they're at, and I can bond with people very quickly. When you do sales, the goal really is to turn a stranger into a friend in the first 30 seconds, and if you can do
Yeah.
that, you have success. So that's what I was good at, and I had a business partner, Matt, who was very kinda business oriented and knew way more about business than I did, and I would
Hmm.
kind of like I wouldn't have said this then because I probably had a little bit too much ego, but
Yeah.
like, little kids are bowling and they put the rails up? Matt was the rails for me, right? Like, I'm this, like, kind of loose cannon wild bowling ball going down the lane, and he kinda kept me in check. There were several occasions where I tried to quit or sell for cheap or whatever, and he talked me out of it. So, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the benefit of really good friends and being surrounded by amazing people.
I love that. Now, what does it actually take to like scale a trade, in business to the size in America right
I think really, like, good systems, good processes, most importantly, good people. I think you need to treat people with a level of respect and then really find out, like, what's your dream? and how can I help you get there? I think
Yeah.
all the other ventures that I did when I got into roofing, when I went into them, I went in with the mindset of, I want to make millions of dollars. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I got into roofing, I said to myself, I just learned in the summer how to make 12, 15 grand a month. I know that the friends that I have I can teach them how to do the exact same thing that I just did.
Right.
And so I think if you are really thinking on how you can help everybody step their game up, what does it say? A rising tide floats all ships. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think that's how you get there. Everyone's got to feel a part of and taken care of.
Oh,
Uh,
I totally agree.
And there's moments in my career where I saw, like, you learn from, right? Like, for example, I talked to a guy who has a roofing company in another state right now on the social media, and I see him making mistakes that I made, and I don't say, "Hey, you're making this mistake," but when I remember, like, one time a sales guy got in my car, and I had a brand new Rolex on, it was a $50,000 Sky Dweller, and he's like, "Dude, I love that watch, how much was it?" And I was like, 50 grand. And 3 months later, that guy was starting his own company. So you kinda learn, like, where you go wrong and you know what I mean? So there's these lessons along the way that you might not understand or realize, like, while you're in the midst of it, but that was a good guy that, if properly cultivated, could have still been around, you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Now, let's talk about the exit because I think a lot of owners like they dream about this moment, but they have no idea what it actually involves.
Sure.
So, you know, maybe what was the process of like selling it into a private equity like?
We had a really good attorney, and he first talked to us, I don't know, a couple years before. He goes, you guys aren't ready, but, let's talk. He said private equity is making their way into the trades, and he was very plugged in that arena with investment bankers. An investment banker's job is to sell you to private equity. That's what they do. They take like a 3% cut, right? So our attorney came to us in 2021, probably like May of 2021. And he said, look, you guys have been growing by 30 or 40% a year. He said, I think you're in a prime, like the market's ripe for guys like you. I want to hook you up with some investment bankers and let's see if, what we come across. So we interviewed 3 different people that he hooked up and kind of told our story to everybody. We chose guys that we were comfortable with out of those 3, and we hit the market. In 6 months, we were under a letter of intent. We had a couple offers before then, offers that, like, I don't know if normal people turn it down, right? But being like, me and this other guy, Matt, we're very big in manifestation, and we both had a number in our mind.
Yep.
So an offer came in and it was like, "Hey, we want, we'll offer you this," right? And, you look at each other and say, "Okay, that would be like, you know, $9 million each, take out some taxes, capital gains." And it's not where we wanna be. You know what I mean? Had this
Yeah.
number we had and we got there. 3 months later, we were just stuck, like, it's gotta be this number has to be above 50, and then that number came.
Right. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
totally amazing. Like, what do business owners need to understand before they even think about an exit?
You gotta, like, dot the i's and cross the t's. There's a lot of guys that wanna take shortcuts and, put this in their pocket or that in their pocket, and they wanna do things in a very short-sighted way.
Yeah.
Private equity understands a lot of things about businesses and a lot of, like, mistakes that owners make, and you can make mistakes, and they can deal with a lot of that, but I think people need to understand that, like, these are professionals, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just do
Yeah.
everything on the do everything the right way, and it's gonna help increase your chances.
I love that. Now, what did that moment feel like, and what surprised you the most about life after the deal closed?
It's surreal. I was already a millionaire,
Hmm.
but you go from, 7 figures in the bank to, well over the 8-figure mark getting wired into your account, and, on that day, you hit refresh a lot,
Yeah.
and then it's there, and it's just, you're kind of like, "Holy shit, that just happened." You know what I mean?
Right.
The guy that used to live in a Volkswagen bus reading Think and Grow Rich,
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. It was the right partners at the right time with the right attorney and the right amount of God. I don't believe in coincidence. I feel like everything happens for a reason. Uh, yeah. So that's what I would, it was an amazing, as you can imagine. I don't want to say it's like winning the lottery because you winning the lottery is just that. This was work, right? Like when you work like I work, I mean, it cost me a marriage. It cost me a lot. So I think that like you make these sacrifices and is it worth it in the end? Sure, 100%, right? And I think that it's not something you can really prepare for. The first thing I did was um I went to the bank and I got I was had been divorced for a couple years at that point, and I got like a sizable check for the ex plus all you know, all the spousal support in one, and I took her over a big check, and she was like, "What's this for?" And I just felt like doing something extra there,
Yeah.
and, the next thing I did was book a trip to Aruba and paid for probably, like, 15 of my friends, and it coincided with a work trip, so it was kind of like in Aruba with, like, 60 of the people I like the most, which was awesome, and then I
I love
knew, like, I kinda had these manifestations and, you know, just started kinda diving into what I was interested in.
Yeah. I love that.
I'll tell you, but the biggest lesson in that wasn't like, "Hey, I crossed the finish line." The thing you don't prepare for is what's next. All of a sudden,
Right.
your baby's gone, right? You got a ton of money, but no purpose, and that's a
Right.
weird spot, right? Like, I
Yeah.
bought my dream house. I got 5 air conditions going. If it's half the week the kids are with their mom, the other half they're with me, I'm like, "This is stupid." Now I'm in this big house, I got 5 air conditioners going, I got these like, none of it matters, right? It's
Yeah.
like, "Well, shit, now what?" Uh,
Right.
Everything you strive for is like, "Okay, you got it." And it didn't dawn on me right away that it was time to, like, create a new bucket list and build a new dream. It took me some time, and I think I actually got, believe it or not, like, a little bit depressed, like, where's my purpose and what's my direction?
Yeah.
That first year after, we kinda took a little bit of a hit culturally and financially. We went from the year we sold, we did 51,000,000, I think we dropped down to, like, mid-30s, and they ended up bringing me back, like, 18 months later, and then the next full year, we got to 56,000,000. Last year, we got to 76,000,000 for the year just in Phoenix, right? And almost a couple million around the country. So, it was good to kind of, really kinda, like, relit the fire for me because the thing I
Yeah.
like the most is being able to teach people how to make money. I can pretty much take anybody and teach them how to make well into the 6 figures.
Yeah. I love that. Now,
Yeah.
for the listeners out there, if you're building a business right now, whether you are starting or you're trying to scale this conversation, this is exactly what you need. And follow this podcast right now. Every week, we bring you the conversations that give you the real insight from people who have actually done it. Now, here is what I find most fascinating about your story. Most people who achieve 50 million exit, disappear into the good life. You went back into the streets. You started giving money to strangers, helping a mother avoid, eviction, wiring 50,000 to change a family's life and posting it, for the world to see. What happened inside you after the exit that made you decide that this was what you needed to do next?
I've always been like that, and really so are my partners. We had even when I first got sober, I mean, I've taken people completely off the street that I didn't know and brought them into my home and had them kicked dope on my couch. I've done that 30 times, right? Some of those people are still sober today, which is awesome. So it's great to be like a link in that chain. For a while we had the roofing company, we also had a rehab. We probably put 150 people through that treatment center for free, and it probably cost in real money 7, 8 grand to keep somebody around for 30 to 45 days, right? So I think, like, there's always been this kind of altruistic thing inside me and both my partners. I had this thought a few years ago that I hadn't done. I thought to myself, while I was following the Grateful Dead around and while I was kind of, high and drunk around the country, I kind of had
Yeah.
like these little there was all these like in AA you get sober and they teach you how to make amends, right? You
Right.
clean up your side of the street, whether they accept it or not, that's on them, but you've done your part. So that was a deal. And I thought to myself, there's really dozens of people I can never make amends to. I don't
Right.
remember, like, when I was 15 and we were skateboarding around the neighborhood stealing beer out of people's garages, right, when I left the door open or whatever. Like, how
Yeah.
I'm never gonna find those people to make amends. So I thought to myself and I've been to a point where I've asked people for spare change, and I had all like, I had a low low, right? Thought to myself, "I'm gonna make a sign that says reverse spare change and stand on the side of the road and give money away." So, and I thought about that years ago, I had never done it. And then I was in Las Vegas, it was during F1. I have a buddy who sells watches, he goes by Vucom on social media, his name's Tyler, and he happens to be there at the same time. He's like, "Yo, I'm gonna go play baccarat." I said, "Never played." He goes, "I'll teach you." So we go down, we play baccarat, I take $1,000, I turn it into 10 grand in like an hour. And I say, "Hey, I'm done." So I stop, and as I'm on the flight home, I think to myself, I'm gonna do that idea I had years ago and give away this money, right? Like, it's in cash, let me go give this away. So I tell
Yeah.
a couple friends from work and I say, "Hey, if you wanna come with me and go make a sign, reverse spare change." So made a couple signs, stood on a street corner. People are driving by, honking. I would walk up to the car and they would try and give me money. I said, "No, this is reverse spare change." So I would give them money. So we gave
Wow.
away over like a 2-day period, like 10 grand that I had, right? I
Yeah.
videos and put them online, and they got a lot of views, like a couple 100 grand, whatever it was. Sorry, a couple 100,000 views, 500,000 views, and I thought, "Oh, that's cool." And I got tons of, like, great comments, like, "Dude, that's really inspiring, blah, blah, blah." I had my business partner, Matt, the one from Texas, flying in. He said, "Dude, I saw your videos, they were awesome." I said, "Yo, grab 10 grand, I'm gonna grab another 10, and let's go hand out 20." And he's like, "I'm in." So he came out. This is really what changed me. So we were doing the signs, then we go knock on some doors, and I go to this section that's not the nicest section of town. I knock on some doors, I knock a door, woman answered. Oh, there's just 3 little kids outside. I'm like, "Hey, is your mom here?" They said, "You can knock." Woman comes, said, "Hey, Bob, Pro West, we had a great year, we just wanna give back." And it had nothing to do with Pro West, it was money out of my own pocket, but it just kinda
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I'm here to give you money." Believe it
Yeah.
or not, people get skeptical, right? I say to this woman, "Hey, I wanna make your Christmas. Did you buy gifts? Are these your kids?" She said, "Just one, the other 2 aren't mine." I gave her 500. These 2 little kids there, I gave them $100 each. I said, "Do you have any siblings?" The girl says, "Yes." I said, "How many?" "Just 1." I said, "Give this to your other sibling," and they go running off, right? That was it. We walk across the street. 3 minutes later, this woman comes walking up the street with those 3 kids now, the 3rd kid and her. She comes up to us and she said, "Did you give my kids this money?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "What's it for?" I said, "We're just giving back over Christmas." She starts crying. She said, "You have no idea how much this helps. We're getting evicted. We're about to be on the street."
Wow.
I was like, "That's crazy." I said, "How much is it to get out of your eviction?" She said, "It's 1,800. I can show you the paper." I said, "No, I can tell by your reaction that you're not lying to me." I said, "I'm gonna pay for your eviction." So between Matt and I, we'd already given the kids 300. We pulled out 1,800 and we had like 500 left. We gave her all the money and we said, "Here's for some food and get out of the eviction." And, uh, and that was it. I went home and I posted that video. And an hour and a half later, I get a call from a friend of mine on the East Coast, very successful guy. He said, "Bob, I just saw your video. That woman that you helped and that boy that was standing next to her while she was in tears," he said, "that was me with my mom when I was that age." He said,
Wow.
I'm gonna wire you $50,000 on Monday. I want you to change their life." And I was like, "Get the fuck out of here." Pardon my French. I said, "Get out of here." He goes, "No, I'm serious." Wire comes through Monday morning. I had went back to the woman. I didn't know where she lived because they came walking up out of the blue, but the woman who, like, they were playing with their kids, I got her
Yeah.
phone number, they put me in touch, I called her, I got her to come up to the office. I said, "Hey, you're not gonna believe this, but somebody wants to help you. They saw a video." And she goes, "My kids said I was on TikTok." And I said, "Yeah, you were." So I said, "How much, "Here's your rent." She says, "1550." I said, "What's the number to your, property management company?" So she tells me the number, I call them, "Hey, I wanna pay the rent for a year, how much is it?" 18,600. We get a cashier's check and make it out to them. We pay for their rent till January 1st, 2027. That was like 18,600 of it, and then we bought her a Honda. She didn't have a car. That was like 10-year-old Honda. It was like 8,700 bucks, and then there was like 22,000 left over in cash, and I gave her a check. So when
Wow.
that happened, I was like, "Yo, this video I just made inspired this other guy to give," and we just positively changed their entire future. Like, these
Yeah.
people are about to be homeless. She's looking into shelter, seeing like, calling churches and seeing what she's gonna do, and it was enough to get one person to step up and give. So you get these
Wow.
people online who are like, "Oh, why do you gotta film it?" Dude, why not? Like, that act of kindness
Exactly.
inspired that guy to do a way bigger act of kindness than
Mhm.
I would have done in one shot, right? At this point, I've been making videos for 5 months. I've probably given away well over 200 grand, but one shot, 50 grand to one family, I was like, "Yo, that's just amazing to be a part of and awesome to be a link in that chain." And I knew when that happened, it went from, like, something I was gonna do at Christmas time to, like, I'm not stopping. I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
going. It's too positive. And then the next day, we were, like, at a Walmart, and I had the meta glasses on, and a guy was walking out, and I was like, "Receipt?" And he just thought I
Yeah.
worked there, and he gave me his receipt, and I reimbursed it. I did that a couple times, and, like, those videos got 10,000,000 views, 8.5 million views, and then it just started popping off, and I just started
Wow.
getting more creative. When you do that, it's interesting because there's a lot of guys who I really looked up to that are creators that did, like,
Yeah.
acts of kindness, and all of a sudden, all these guys a week later are asking people at Walmart for their receipt. I'm like, "These guys are recreators, they're not creators."
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
stole my idea, right? And,
Mhm.
so I just started getting more and more creative, and I'm just trying to stay a step ahead of people trying to, do what I was.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh, I
been,
love that.
5 months, and I'm still going strong, and I'm still, I give away every month 35 to 50 grand, depending on the month.
Yeah.
Um, and I get some of that back. People are like, "Oh, this guy makes way more money off the views." You don't make the money off. I got 500 million views. I think
Yeah.
last month I made just under 10 grand, right, from the
Wow.
views. And so other
Yeah.
stuff can happen, like sponsorship and that kind of stuff. I get hit up for sponsorship, like, from casinos and stuff, but the last thing I'm gonna do is, like, shout out a casino ad while I'm changing somebody's day.
Yeah.
It doesn't align. I'd rather just keep giving away the money. So,
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that. You're doing an amazing job. Like my heart is like, like, where does that impulse, to give come from, for someone who once had nothing? Like what makes you, it gives you that drive to want to reach out and help so many people?
I will never forget when you're really homeless and when you really don't know where your meal's coming from, you don't forget what that feeling's like.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
A couple years ago, I got ripped off for some watches pretty publicly by a guy that was kind of famous on social media. Called
Mm,
himself a timepiece gentleman, got me for a couple 100 grand and a bunch of people. And I put it on TikTok and ended up picking up like 90,000 followers, maybe 50 million views from that.
yeah,
And the guy ended up in prison. He's in federal prison right now. So I brought down this kind of Ponzi scheme, which is a whole nother story in itself. We could save for another day. But it's so crazy because it's like, where do I get there? How does a guy like me, who used to be selfish to the core, right, and just a constant taker when I was homeless and doing drugs and living in a Volkswagen, how does a guy like that go to getting ripped off a couple 100 grand and being like, "Yo, I was in a position to get ripped off for a couple 100 grand. That's a gift." You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, it didn't
yeah,
alter my thought process or change anything for my family's financial future, which is a beautiful spot to be in, an amazing spot to be in. But I'll
yeah,
tell you, the last 5 months have, like, it's changed me.
yeah,
Like, connecting with I've hugged more strangers in the last 5 months than I ever have in my entire life, and that's from a guy
yeah.
who's been in AA for 29 years, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
connecting with people on a level that, has really brought me back to where I once was, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, like, I don't give a shit about the watches, I don't give a shit about the cars.
Yeah.
I look, I have my dream house, I have my, dream car, like, I have all the things I want, and
Yeah.
I'm here, and I know if something happened to me tomorrow, my kids are taken care of for good, and anything
Right.
above, like, yo, let's go make positive impact. You know what I mean? And so now the new plan is to build a company around that altruism and give away the profit so I can give more. That's the
I
new
love
plan.
that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. Oh,
That's that's to come down the road. And I mean, I gotta, it's like, I have an amazing community too. I mean, really, like, it's the same hundreds of people, like, leaving comments and, you develop a
yeah.
weird stuff happens on social media, right? I've really bonded with some guys. Um,
Yeah.
just today, I was at the bank and some guy looks at me as I'm talking to the teller, and he was like, we walked out. He's like, "You're a nine-figure roofer." I was like, "Yeah." How could you tell? He said, "The voice and the tattoos, because I'm not really in the videos." I wanted the spotlight to be on the act of kindness. I'm not trying to blow up my own spot. I'm not a dude that's trying to get rich. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of the opposite. So social media is an interesting place. I literally have gotten probably over 100,000 DMs of people asking for jobs, which I always send a link. They can apply. We've probably interviewed 400 people in the last 5 months from that.
That's awesome.
We've done a bunch of roofs from it. People reach out to me and like, "Hey, can you help with the roof?" And the answer is always yes. Just today, the girl was like freaking out. She's like, "I can't believe I'm talking to you." I was like, "I'm a roofer. I'm not a celebrity."
I love it. I love it. Now, for everyone listening, I want you guys to understand that success is not the exit. Success is what you do after. Now, Bob Schober built something extraordinary from nothing, and then he chose to use it to change the lives of people who are still where he once was. Now, that is not just a business story. That is a human story, and it is one of the most powerful ones that I've heard. Bob, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm speechless. Your story is just amazing. You rose above the chaos. You were hit many times with a lot of different obstacles in life, and you conquered them all. You never gave up, and you hit the level of success that many people dream about. But not you didn't let that word get to your head or your ego. You really, you took what you earned, and you did the most you can to help others. And for what you're doing right now is a dream, because you're actually going out and you're helping people say, hey, you know what, I've accomplished this, I've earned this, but hey, I want to help you. And you change one life, that person changes another life, and another, and before you know it, the world could be a better place. That world that we all imagine in our head, that we hope one day could be a reality. But you have to always take the first step, and you've taken the first step. And I just want to say thank you for being the person you are, and for doing the things that you do. And congratulations on your sobriety, and that's a huge accomplishment. And just thank you for being you and for everything that you do.